so let's go ahead and go over active transport. I'm going to quickly go over this. I'm going to quickly go over photosynthesis. You should kind of know it by now. And I'm going to touch on cellular respiration. We're going to talk about that in more detail later. I did want to run through photosynthesis with you tomorrow. We're going to set up another, not tomorrow. Tomorrow's remote, right?
Thursday.
Okay. Thursday, we're going to set up a little photosynthesis lab and let it run overnight and look at it on Friday too. So Friday, you're going to be evaluating 2 labs on Friday. Okay? So, active transport. Yesterday we talked about passive transport. Active transport is going to do what?
Use energy.
Yes, it's going to use energy. Because it's active, if it's active, it requires energy. Okay, when we're talking about transport, we're talking about across the cell membrane. And what was that term for the cell membrane? 2 layers?
Yeah, bilipid layer.
Yeah.
Phospholipid bilayer. So remember it had the phosphorus group, it's got the little lipid tails. And there's 2 layers of it. They face each other. Within this phospholipid bilayer, you can have proteins. These are transport proteins. So you still have your layer going on past these. These are just kind of plopped into the phospholipid bilayer. Okay, so let's say that something wants to move into the cell. So we need something, this little molecule, to go into the cell. So it's going to come up right here. And it's going to attach to that transport protein. The transport protein is then, it's going to have a little, I'm going to erase this for right now. It's going to have like a little ATP molecule attached to it. It's going to send up some energy to that transport protein. And the transport protein is kind of going to act like a gate to let it in. So think of this as like an electronic gate. You know, you pull up to it. So this would be us pulling up to it. We know this is the channel we want to go through. You know that's the gate you're wanting to go through. Then you hit the remote control. That would be the energy that's supplied to it. And the gate opens up. So the gate's going to open up. And they actually kind of open up like that, and then they tilt back like that, but I don't really know how to draw that, so I'm just going to act like it's open up like that. But just know that it kind of does like this stuff will come right here, and then it kind of opens, it kind of rotates like that, or pivots like that. Okay. All right, so that's going to move in. ATP is going to supply energy. Do you know how it supplies it energy?
ATP doesn't use
She
carbohydrates.
kind of mentioned it in a video yesterday. You might not have heard it. Do you know what it becomes after it uses up its energy? Instead of ATP, what does it become?
Certain sugars, energy.
No. It's still, this one is adenosine.
It's
What?
ATP.
This is TP. What is that? What does the T stand for?
Phosphate.
Phosphate. It's going to lose a phosphate,
So then
and that will make it release energy. So then it will be what?
Di.
Diphosphate. When that phosphorus comes off of it, when that phosphate comes off of it, that's when it releases the energy, and then it becomes ADP, adenosine diphosphate. So the ATP is going to release energy to the transport protein, then that makes it become ADP. Then it's got to go through this whole process again to become ATP again, which it will do within the cell. So we got transport proteins. There are carrier proteins that can be in it. There are like receptor proteins. Sometimes you'll see these will have like little receptors out from them that basically are, you know, like anemones or little sea creatures. It's kind of like that, reaching out for certain molecules, and they'll grab them and pull them into it. There's also ion channels that will be in it. Now, an ion channel, the difference between an ion channel and a transport protein. If it's an ion channel, it allows ions to move in and out freely. Would that be active or passive? Passive, because it's not requiring energy. If it's moving ions in through these transport proteins, then it's going to be active, because when you have to open up these proteins, it has to have energy supplied to it. Okay, so that's pretty much active transport. Let's go over photosynthesis for a minute. Okay, photosynthesis, we know is in what kind of species? Plants. And what's the gist of photosynthesis? What's it trying to do? What's the main goal it wants?
Convert solar energy into useful energy for the planet.
It's going to make its own food, make its own energy. That energy is what? Nope. That's what it's using. What's the food it's making? Yes, glucose. So it's making sugar. Plants are called autotrophs. Auto means what? What?
Automatic.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Manually.
If it's an autobiography, what is it?
Self.
Self. So this is a self. Troph sounds like trough. What is a trough?
Something horses drink out of.
Okay, something that you feed animals out of. So it's a self feeder. It makes its own food. So anything else that's going to be eating food like that plants make or eating other animals is going to be called a what?
I'm trying to put in.
Starts with an H.
Oh.
You should have heard this word by now. Heterotrophs.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's gonna. These are gonna eat food. They're not gonna make their food. They're gonna eat food for energy. So that can be plants or animals. So heterotrophs do not make their own food. Autotrophs make their own food. Alright, so photosynthesis. Chemical formula for photosynthesis. What does it take in? C. Carbon what?
Dioxide.
CO2. And yes, it does have to have sunlight to do all this. Takes in carbon dioxide. What else do plants take in through their roots?
Water.
Water. And we've already said that it's going to form, its main product is glucose, which is C6H12O6. And what's a byproduct of photosynthesis? Oxygen. Byproduct is just something that's made in the process, but the plant doesn't need. Which is good for us because we need oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide. Okay, so that right there is the carbon cycle. Animals are breathing out carbon dioxide. Plants take that carbon dioxide and water, produce their food, and then they give us oxygen. So that is the chemical formula for photosynthesis. It's also basically the carbon cycle. Okay, and what cells have to be present for photosynthesis to happen? Organelles, sorry. Organelles within the cell.
Like a
Cytoplasm.
chloroplast. Chloroplast.
Chlorophyll.
Or, yeah.
Oh yeah, chloroplast. Chloroplasts, which have chlorophyll in them. What do we associate with chloroplast or chlorophyll? So what's the first thing you think of?
Plants.
Plants. Chlorine, yeah.
I was just kidding.
What color do you associate with it?
Green.
Green. Okay. Okay, and if you ever see a little diagram of chloroplasts, they're just kind of these little stacks that are within the cell, and those are what's actually absorbing sunlight. And then it runs the process of photosynthesis. Okay, so the first thing that the plants have to do is get their energy from the what? From the sun. So you have to have sunlight for photosynthesis to be going on. The light energy is converted to chemical energy. This is within the cell, within the chloroplast. And then it's temporarily stored in ATP and NADPH. And NADPH is just an energy carrier molecule. So it helps carry energy. And we know that ATP is just an energy molecule. So we convert light energy to chemical energy. It's stored in ATP and NADPH. And then the plant uses the ATP and NADPH to build an organic molecule. Or let's say compound instead of molecule. Let's say compound. What would be the organic compound that it's making? Glucose. Organic just means what? Not as in farming, but in science terms. Natural, something that's living. So a molecule that's for something that's living. So this is the molecule that helps the plants live. Organic compounds are basically made out of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Okay, so that's why glucose, C6H12O6, is an organic compound or organic molecule is also okay. I don't know if you know the difference between a compound or molecule, but generally, a lot of times organic stuff is more or less referred to as a molecule just because of the way it's bonded. But that's chemistry. We don't need to get into that right now. Alright, so that's the basic rundown of photosynthesis. It might be a little more detailed than you usually hear just with the ATP and NADPH. We will talk a little bit more about it when we do the lab Thursday. Last thing I want to mention is about heterotrophs. And this is not photosynthesis. Heterotrophs use something called cellular respiration. To get energy from food. So, if we're eating a plant, how are we getting energy from that?
For eating a plant,
If you're eating a plant, how are you getting energy from
it
that?
has glucose, right?
Yeah.
So doesn't it take that, like sugars from it and make it into ATP?
Yeah, so it's going to take those sugars and it's going to convert it into an energy source for us. All right, but what's the first process you're going to be doing when you're eating? Chew it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to chew it. Digestion starts where?
In your mouth.
In your mouth with what?
Saliva and
What's in the saliva?
yeah.
Enzymes.
That break it down.
Okay, enzymes are going to start breaking down everything that's in your food. Okay, this is important that you remember this. Enzymes are proteins which are catalysts. Okay, so enzymes, this is telling us that they are proteins, so it's made out of protein. What does catalyst tell us? Everybody know what a catalyst is? It's going to speed up the reaction. So it's going to speed up the reaction. So it's going to speed up the reaction of processing the food. So enzymes that are in your mouth, go ahead and start breaking down the food. It's speeding up the reaction. So it's breaking it down into its smaller particles. And then it's going to go through your digestive tract, and your stomach's going to break it down. Your intestines are going to absorb and reabsorb stuff. And the end result is going to be ATP that you use for energy. Okay, so that's a very basic rundown of cellular respiration. We are going to go into more detail about it later. But just so you go ahead and have an idea of it.